Circulating amongst artistic as well as eccentric people, I came across a few spiritually minded individuals, and with great curiosity about the workings of the human mind, discovered the existence of UFOIC club activities. This unusual title stands for West Australian UFO Investigation Group. They were ufologists searching for evidence of visitations from other worlds and realms. Since I was once a member of such a group in Victoria, I thought it would be good to discover what they had researched into and found in Western Australia. I frequented their meetings, making new friends who were keenly interested in observing the skies with or without their telescopes. There were those who believed they had encountered occupants of so-called UFOs visiting our world from other places and dimensions. The president of the club suggested that one evening we should attend a gathering where a female medium channeled to people from different realms. Apparently, they imparted vital information about our current world situation, advising Earth people how to correct their ways. One curiously wondered what psychological considerations needed to be observed here, and how true and reliable all those channelings were. It was going to be quite revealing. We met them at the Country Women's Association. The old building was several stories high. Right on the ground level was the venue, where a reasonably large group of people were gathered. The event was chaired by Merva, the medium, who usually went into a deep trance, during which allegedly another individual from other worlds imparted their wisdom, responding to questions. The hall was also used for other activities by different groups. However, Merva's group met there regularly. Shortly after entering, one became aware of domestic sounds from other occupants elsewhere in the building. The people gathered within were curiously but intently listening to Merva. After everybody had been welcomed, she began to channel to an outlandish alien being from several light years away. During the break, she kept looking in my direction as if she knew me from before, but I had never met her until then. And while we had cups of tea and biscuits, she approached me, asking if I had time to have a little chat. When the session was over, she asked me what I thought of it, realizing it was my first time. I told her that my friend from UFOIC group had spoken great things in regard to this gathering, and I was certainly not disappointed. However, needed to clarify matters in relation to what I knew of other beings from elsewhere as aliens, as we were all from the stars, just the way it was considered by a wider community. She was very happy about the idea, asking if we were going to frequent their group next time. As far as I was concerned, coming back would be an excellent idea. Then she asked my name and its meaning, and I explained to her that it was originally Sanskrit and meant the Lord over heavenly bodies. All of a sudden she was ecstatic and began to cry, saying, "We have been told all about you, for we were asking for you, Master. Please stay." This surprised me and my friend. I felt strange and hoped these people did not consider me once again as the Saviour's return. I never believe in pretense, or being put on a pedestal to be worshipped. Many greeted me in reverence and tried to come closer, with the aim of touching my clothing. This is when I needed to make a few corrections, explaining to them that I was somebody who could help them, but was not interested in being considered the second coming of the great man. Merva and her associates started to question me about my being the heavenly, indeed the Galactic Federation's answer to their prayers. They would not accept a no answer about me not being the one, for they had been told 4 times all about my looks, wisdom, and even my name, starting with the letter J or S. One had the feeling as if they, like many others in the past, wanted to own me. To begin with, I was not religious and very critical about mediumistic activities under the light of psychological study. I was also extremely suspicious about the authenticity of channeling activities, as there were many mediums doing it for fame, self-gratification, and financial gain. Without any prejudice or intolerance, some tend to dream about channeling extragalactic energies from light years away without realizing that it may not be so. In fact, they are so convinced that they were specially chosen to engage in such a divine duty. I was unwilling to deny and yet unable to accept such observations at face value. I seek proof for at least some resemblance of reality, but avoid creating an impression of undermining any new thought, for I understand there are multitudes of unknowns in our lives in a physical universe. After all my studies and research, I feel that life, as we know in its entirety, is probably just an illusion, and we are indeed made up of mathematical equations, for I see mathematics in everything I observe all around me. I still question our daily experiences identified by our 5 senses. Could everything therefore be illusional and visually real at the same time? If so, how are we going to deal with the other human senses, touch, smell, warmth, cold, and all our emotions, feelings of love and hatred? Illusion is something that produces an impression of reality, perception as of visual stimuli that represents what is perceived differently than the way it is in reality. Are we a beautiful artwork within a 3-dimensional continuum? Are we creating the illusion of reality by ourselves? If it is so, where were we originally placed? And in what format? With these considerations in mind, one curiously asks why we always make the same mistakes and do the same thing over and over again. What is our real nature, and what indeed is our understanding of the universe and planetary existences from microcosm to macrocosm we are surrounded with? We have seen the effects of positive thinking and the negative, discovered within the human element of life, which proves that we can alter any given outcome, and therefore our futures. How come, then, that it appears as if we are unable to change our lifestyles, places, and all the other features around us by thought alone? Are our thoughts also illusional? What about our dreams? What is real? Is there perhaps an intelligence energy? How can one discover it without forming fanaticism, only scientifically examining it? Consider the animal kingdom. Are they also part of our dreams, living a life of virtual kind, as with everything we observe? On the other hand, our dreams often appear to be more vivid and more real under certain circumstances than our lives in the physical world. Interestingly, mathematics seem to describe the instances of life in the universe with the known data incorporated within the psyche of humans. It remains not as an invention, but a viable discovery. Ancient philosophers seem more and more accurate as we continue to learn about their wisdom. The question remains, what is consciousness, and what is really considered as intelligence? It can be discovered within the ideology behind the matrix, real existence or dream reality. Naturally, one tends to think of this as being either a virtual reality or just an imagined one. When one of us does things to other people, like kissing or slapping the face, those participating in the experience feel it, and it is therefore logical to think that the source in a different reality must feel the same. If this is so, which of the two is the actual reality, and which is the dreamt of or imagined? Furthermore, our dream reality is continually shared. Is there more to what we currently consider and are yet to discover? What is reality? Could there be yet another individual consciousness other than me capable of watching over my reality, which I consider as real, within that other reality? Is it perhaps a collective consciousness or an individualized totality? Since everything we observe and experience can be explained mathematically, as some prominent men of science claim, from atomic structures to more complex elements, which make the chemicals interact in our brains, thus the activities expressing our thoughts, all we experience are the resultant impressions of physical life. We can indeed create all the shapes and color we observe in nature, utilizing fractal mathematics on our computers. If there is a God, he or she probably is a supreme mathematician, and we are all mathematical expressions and equations. A number of quantum scientists in our times appear to support the notion that we are living in virtual reality, and our lives on Earth are illusional. If this is true, where are we really based, and what are we in reality? Are we perhaps only a consciousness in a fluidic space, capable of expressing any form or shape at will? Are we primarily living in a parallel reality? Are we living in a parallel world, in a parallel universe, expressing a physicality dream? Could that be why our belief systems declare the existence of continuity? Since our genetic codes virtually remain forever, passing from one generation to another, are we perhaps using this avenue for our benefit from within another reality? When there is smoke, where is the fire? Has humanity finally begun to discover the ultimate answer to their lifelong questions? Are we finally beginning to understand ourselves better, and finally answer the question to our purpose, understanding where we came from? Recently, children from all around the world, just like my son did, began to speak unusually wisely about the concept of God, claiming it to be a form of energy without any human attributes or personal trends, but being present everywhere and nowhere. Are we originally that energy intelligence, creating exquisite visions of reality? If everything is an illusion, and we create it by ourselves, or it is created for us, why do we need all the human trends of falling in love, experiencing life, getting married, having children, even being born, growing into adulthood, enduring old age, and finally expiring? Can we change it all to our liking, remaining young, living forever, or becoming wealthy in every way at will? What is the purpose of all the sufferings we are told we must have? In a quantum way of thinking, even the tiniest particles and their complex combinations share the same mechanics, no matter where they are placed in the known continuum within the universe and beyond. What can be observed in close proximity or light years away, and yet display the sameness? Are we therefore a reflection of what is real? Are we perhaps just computer-generated impulses, based somewhere seemingly dark, like dark energy or black holes? I am comparing and interpreting many great thinkers philosophers and psychologists' ideas and wisdom with my own experiences. Remember, our brains constantly remain active even when we sleep. Are we perhaps in touch with the actual reality in the other place and time when we dream, and hopefully remember them? Since one could never approach the fanatical and biased, like for example the witnesses, or members of a dogmatic community, certain questions still remain unanswered. Could one therefore be able to present those queries to what seems totally alien, even ridiculous and not researched into, to people of complete fanaticism? Maybe the citizens of the universal scientific community from within the higher dimensions or intergalactic existence can be approached. I think that one needs to take it more open-mindedly and seriously before discarding the inquiry and consider the alternatives. I have been pondering upon the following questions for a while now. For instance, is free will an illusion? What of the illusion of family togetherness? But that is a different story. On the other hand, people who had traumatic upbringing or hardships tend to lead a life of escapism by creating an illusional world for themselves, and this seems to be where they find acceptance and self-value. If it assists them in a small way, and they are happy with it, I can do naught else but admire them. However, I always prefer to leave a door open, and who knows what can come out into the light, and show us different ways of thinking. Sometimes, seeing where the current world is heading, people create their own ideals, and when shared with others, it can become a shining beacon. I like to think that this could be one of the reasons how certain cults are born, and adherers to such ideals seem to find some consolation and happiness therein. But consolation and happiness can also be discovered in other, more positive ways of thinking and living. However, extraterrestrial communique through channeling and the messages relayed should not necessarily be ignored, for they could reveal an individual's psychological makeup, wishes, and ideals, and could also be very unique and possible. On the other hand, I am not in the habit of declaring myself as if I am somebody else, unless, of course, acting on stage as a character portrayed in a play. I choose to remain a person of integrity, and it is like what you see is what you get. Yet many prefer to see me as different, and an individual of higher standing, or not sophisticated, uneducated, and probably an uncultured, ignorant person, even today. But an individual of quality would never declare who he or she is by portraying themselves as someone to be adored. Indeed, I am different, but I do not seek thrills at the expense of others. If people regard me as a way-shower, I humbly accept it, and if people reject me, it is not a concern, and certainly not a tragedy. When we look around us, we come across individuals who are so convinced and believing in everything they are told, and for them there is nothing else outside their own little squares, thus limiting themselves in the extreme. Some open-mindedness can solve the problem. At the opposite side of the scale, I have come across people who considered themselves as the only mediators and channels between humanity and those from different dimensions and other existences within this vast universe. During my career, I also met a number of people claiming to be historic figures, like Napoleon Bonaparte, Lord Nelson, the Apostles Peter and Paul, Merlin, King Arthur, Nostradamus, and many more. Almost all of them believed either being the reincarnation of those great figures, or just continued existences of their former lives on Earth. There were also those who needed public understanding, probably needing psychological consideration for their condition. I could not imagine putting myself in a position and assuming an identity to please some people. Although some expected to hear something like this, claiming me to be one of those of higher echelon. Just imagine how average, everyday people would take such a person claiming to be the incarnation or second coming of somebody of great importance in the world's history. If indeed it was real and such a great person walked amongst people, what would they do to that individual? They would probably end up in an institution, or worse still, be completely ignored by the very humans who adhered to his teachings for centuries. As in the past, I have led a wide-ranging study into people's distresses and distinctive dilemmas. Some of those who assumed they had God-given abilities in the name of some belief system, even in the name of spiritualism, were indeed telepaths and mystics upholding spiritual values, which were endlessly preached the world over by almost all religious institutions. At least, psychologically, we can observe some of the characteristics in people, even claim that those facets may be beneficial for them, as they may find some comfort while overcoming their own personal issues. I believe we need to be prepared for multiple challenges and be open-minded about all kinds of human experience, for we are incapable of knowing everything. By becoming more open-minded, we can more easily accept new sciences and numerous theories about the unique human mind, even in life existing elsewhere other than our fragile, tiny world in a vast universe, which still remains a puzzle despite all our scientific prowess and discoveries. Taking this into account, sometimes going with the flow can be a nice way to observe the very nature of being human. As it was said, in every philosophical and religious ideal, one can always discover something worthwhile, something beautiful. This again takes us to the same conclusion. Where there is smoke, there needs to be fire. Who knows, maybe we will find that fire one day soon. The fact is that the whole of the universe around us is based upon the cause and effect principle. Remember, known existence is defined through our five senses, and what is not definable does not exist for us. We need to observe and feel things before accepting them as real, whereas the sixth sense defines the imagined or the invisible. We also need to revisit scientist Pavlov's experiments, where we discover the need for stimuli, for the brain to actively send the requested messages to appropriate parts of the body, whether belonging to a human or animal. And the stimuli can be anything, from the sound of bells to the appetizing aroma of food. Here we observe the cause and effect principle in action. Consider ex nihil nihilum. Nothing comes from nothing. My pets respond to the word food, and I know that all pets respond to gentle touch and reward. Animals also dream. When living in Perth, I met a number of psychics I became friends with, and one was Merva, and in her group there were a number of very curious people wanting to know if there was any truth in those endeavors, like communicating with the unknown and mysterious. I discovered the same amongst those attending other spiritual circles, perhaps just to hear something about their loved ones, who had left them some while ago, as observed with all life forms on earth, and which we too must face one day. When the inevitable happens, it always leaves a mysterious but haunting silence, which those left behind cannot cope with well. Even if what is relayed by a psychic medium could be considered as being born within the mind of that individual's rich imagination, The visitor to those gatherings seeking evidence of survival would be helped to renew hope that there is always a possibility for survival and a beautiful future, perhaps even leading one into understanding why it is much better not to dwell on departures, but live in the now. There is always something valuable to look for, and all is not empty or wasted. In those gatherings, people are usually convinced about the presence of healing angels, who are ever ready to help them overcome any ills they may have. It is no different from taking part in religious, sectarian, and cultist assemblies, where adherents believe that by participating in prayer sessions, heavenly energies would heal them and make them whole again. I have known people who ardently desired concentrating their positive thoughts in meditation or praying in deep religious ecstasy, believing the outcome was dependent on their trust and faith in themselves or an outside source of divinity, particularly when they were miraculously healed or became very wealthy. It is proven that thoughts can influence matter. Positive thoughts yield positive results. Here one remembers the biblical account about Jesus' life and teachings. This is where one discovers Jesus having healed the sick and lame. But if you notice, he often told them that their faith has healed them. But what are we really to understand by faith? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 describes it this way: Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It is a proven fact that today when one thinks positively for a positive outcome of any event, one is more likely to achieve it. This can be seen in sporting events and unexpected healing and recovery situations from any ill. In other words, Jesus' words can be interpreted similarly to what we are implying here. Perhaps people need little triggers like self-confidence, courage, prayers, and meditations. But remember, by imagination alone, an individual is quite capable of changing his or her metabolism, even influencing their DNA programming. By thought alone, as scientifically proved many times over, every one of us can influence water molecules. Dr. Imado of Japan has demonstrated this successfully. Then one asks, what else can we influence? Think about it. It sounds so true when we claim that thoughts make us what we are. We are indeed what we think. Sometimes we are forced into playing different roles, and that seems to be the only acceptable way to please certain types of people, especially when one desires to get to know them better. That is probably why, according to the Holy Scripts, an apostle of Jesus exclaimed that he became everything to everyone, obviously within some limits. In reality, if we can accept others as we accept ourselves and are willing to discover how they think and function, we can perhaps open many doors towards a more peaceful existence in the world. But do all those people accept us as we are? Do we truly accept them as they are? Then again, there are groups of people who can do naught else but oppose everything and everybody in the world, in a sense judging the world as something evil and getting worse all the time. They are the kind of people who create hindrances and stumbling blocks out of nothing. They are classified as dreamers of peace, but actually far remove themselves from its ideals. Indeed, a little tolerance and acceptance would go a lot further. When one makes mention of human intelligence, one wonders what level of this is really considered when they conduct their war games. They are probably seen by the intergalactic people as creatures lacking the ability to calculate the result of what 1 + 1 equals. This is true especially when humans conduct their conflicts against each other without the slightest idea of what destruction of life and intelligence they inflict. no matter what color, persuasion, or race they belong to. It is beyond the laws of logic, and therefore, on all fronts, current humanity is in self-destruct mode. Humans today seem to begin their fun games of destruction of their own kind, as well as the world upon which they live, from a very young age. Observe their lifestyles and interests in wiping off the lives of others, belonging to different beliefs and ideologies. Even their entertainment is continually based upon the same, from infancy to adulthood, which remains a questionable process. However, they are capable of living creatively, inventively, caringly, and peacefully. Humans were envisaged to become great carers of the planet and each other. When you consider that whenever any movement towards peace around the world is detected, some other more negative element in their thinking is introduced. All intellectual, logical, inventive genius towards reaching the stars with peaceful endeavor is also squashed. This is probably why humanity is not permitted to advance to the far recesses of space. There are those who believe that any warlike thought detected results in the inability to inflict the moon or other bodies around the sun, for humans of this nature may be considered virus-like by the outsiders.